I'm going to give one shiur on this, okay? The shiur is officially the second half of Nun Ches, Nun Tes, the second half of Nun Tes, second half of Nun Tes, Samach, and the beginning of Samach. But the Madreg of Shmoy. So Wednesday, unfortunately, I cannot be here because I have but tomorrow at least I'm going to start the new mind. I'm going to give you one shiur on this and I'm going to move on. If it was last week, I would have given you 2 or 3 shiurim, but I missed so much time and I feel very bad for you that I'm making you waste your time. So I'm going to give you one shiur. The sugya is Hu Shmei Echad, right? Hu Shmei B'Vad. Achei Temimim Hu Shmei B'Vad, right? Who says this? The Pirkei Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer ben Horkenes, Rabbi Yisai, in case you don't understand. Rabbi Lezer ben Horkenes. The same Rabbi Lezer and Rabbi Yechon and Bezakis Talmud together in Shua ben Chananya. It's the same Rabbi Lezer. He's the one who said Achei Temimim Hu Shmei B'Vad. Now you understand the kasha. The kasha is, last time I checked, we believed only in one God. Ain't it? Adin, Echad. So, how many gods do we have? We will get that up here. And it's a really shvera kasha. It's a really shvera kasha. In other words, if the kasha doesn't bother you, you don't understand. Chassidus is not playing games. And Chassidus not playing games means 2 things. When something is written in Torah, and something is written in Torah Shabbal Peh, we take it seriously. If the Torah tells you that the Eibishter has green eyes, we have to understand Lahav and Inyan, green eyes, Lamaila. We don't play around. But on the other hand, we're not afraid to ask the hard questions. There's no world. No world. And you have Hu Shmai. Now, of course, if you want to be lumdish about it, you can say that that's already 3 things. The Eibishter, and then there's Hu, and then there's Shmai. There's one God. So Hu Shmai. What does that mean, Hu Shmei B'Vad? It's a legitimate question. Now, you also know that there's 5 answers to this question. More than 5 answers to this question. Why? Because it depends on what Ashlan Ve'ela means. Yeah. I've taught many times the Maim of Yadaita from Reish Mem Gimel. Huh? Reish Nun Zayin. I mean Chanukah, Reish Mem Gimel, yeah? What does the Maimon talk about? Ani Avaya Leishanisi. How many types do you have in Leishanisi? I think you have 5. If you count the 2 Parakim. How do you have 5 different types of Ani Avaya Leishanisi? The answer to that question is, before you say Leishanisi, you have to translate what Avaya means. Once you know what Avaya means, you can define Leishanisi in different ways depending on how you translate Avaya. So, this statement, which is poshet in common sense, in seichel ha-poshet von a mensch, a great kasha. Before the Eibishter made the world, there was the Eibishter. Don't confuse me. What's about Hu Shmai? It's a really hard kasha to answer. So, if you took together all the Maimorim that explain this, you'd come up with a whole bunch of different pshatim of Achei Nivra Ha'elam Hu Shmei B'Vad. And they would all be true. You know why? Because we first define Achei Nivra Ha'elam, and then you'll understand Hu Shmei B'Vad. For example, if Achei Nivra Ha'elam means El Mabriya, Hu Shmei B'Vad means Atzilus Nahayim Atzilus. Not a problem. If Achei Nivra Ha'elam means Atzilus, then Hu Shmei B'Vad means Hayim Atzilus. If Achei Nivra Ha'elam means Tzimtzum Arishan, Ak, Hu Shmei B'Vad Lifnei Tzimtzum, and every Maimon gives you a different version. And in other words, if you wanted to collect all the places in Chassidus that explain Hu Shmei B'Vad, like all the Maimorim in Chassidus that explain Ani Avaya Leishanisi, we have more than one pshat, or a pasuk that's in my head is pasuk the Lashon Koil Hanikr B'Shmi V'Lechvei Dibrosa V'Tzadim Afasisim. How many pshatim are there? That pasuk in Chassidus. Brosa V'Tzadim Afasisim sounds like B'riyat Tzir Nasiya, yeah? What's Nikra, Shmi, Chveidi? What are those 3 stuff, as they say in all the Torah? There's a Riboy Pirush. And you can make a whole hemshech of Maimorim explaining the different ways. It's not one is right and one is wrong. Every one depends on a different context. Vumeret. You know the old joke. You go over to Mashpia and you ask him a question. Before you finish the question, the tenant is V'enzach Vumeret. I understand that, but you could tell me, wegen was ist Retzach da? V'enzach Vumeret. Aber wie Retzach da? V'enzach Vumeret. Thank you very much. I heard of great Chassidim. I'm a doctor, I'm all looking at Chassidim, I'm gewusst Chassidus. But they didn't like to speak Chassidus because it was a scholar. So before you even finished asking Mashpia the question, and the Mashpia knew, the answer was, depends on the context. Now, he wasn't going to tell you. He wasn't going to tell you. Eat your heart out. In other words, Havon of Chassidus was considered a student to being a Chassid. I'm a daf versteh Chassidus, so figure it out. To me, but anyway, so this is a perfect example of that. What does that mean? Actually, my friend, we have one Eibishter. And the Eibishter's head that Amitzias, built in Mitzias, Nimtza, and on and on and on. So now listen. A lot of Chassidus will answer the question in a context, right? In other words, Achlei Nivra Ha'olam doesn't mean when the Eibishter was all by himself. Achlei Nivra Ha'olam means there was a point in Ishtalshalos, which is higher than the expression Nivra Ha'olam. But that point in Ishtalshalos, which is higher than the Inyan Nivra Ha'olam, has a shaykhus to Ishtalshalos. So then who was Shleivavar? Is that a kasha? You follow what I'm saying? In other words, if you explain what's before Nivra Ha'olam, if before Nivra Ha'olam means Atzmus, who was Shleivavar, should make you really nervous. But before Nivra Ha'olam means before Bria, let's say, or before Atzilus, or before Ak, it's not so hard to explain why, because there's already a Lakus, and there's already Gilui, there's already a Shtalshalos, and there's already a Shaykhus to Elames. But then it's Achalai Nivra, it's higher than this level, which we're calling Nivra Ha'olam. But the Rebbe Rashab, in this half a Maimer, decides Achalai Nivra Ha'olam means the Eibishter hasn't even had a tickle about Elames. The Eibishter, as he is by himself. In the next Maimer, which starts on page Samach Aleph, he's going to give you a fancy pshat. Nivra Ha'olam is a madrege, and higher than that madrege is also madreges, and who was Shmei Bilvad is madreges higher than the madrege of Nivra Ha'olam. But in this half a Maimer, the Rebbe Rashab decided Achlei Nivra Ha'olam means before there was anything. The Eibishter, as he is by himself, finished. Atzmus. Not even Atzmus. Whatever word means the Eibishter that you can't say is a pshat, is a word with a toya, mildaf and nochech, and red wegen the Eibishter. So the Rebbe Rashab says the Pirkei the Rebbe Lezer makes a statement. And the Pirkei the Rebbe Lezer is Rebbe Lezer ben Horkenes. And we take Rebbe Lezer ben Horkenes very seriously. So Achalei Nivra Ha'olam, before there was anything, there was already who was Shmei Bilvad. And the Rebbe Rashab says that's really disturbing. That's what he's doing in this half a Maimer. So 2 weeks ago, I gave you 3 shiurim on who. And now I'm giving you 1 shiur on Shmoi. Why? Because I have Rachmanis on you, Pashat. What did we discuss? Who? Who means the Eibishter that only the Eibishter knows. And we had a whole pilpul about Yediyah, Maisa, who knows who. Who knows? You know what's lower than you, you know yourself, you know what's higher than you, right? The hardest thing to know is what's higher than you. The second hardest thing to know is yourself. And the easiest thing to know is what's lower than you. Means nobody knows the Eibush except the Eibush himself. Now what's lower than him, that's what's him, now it's nothing, just the Eibush. So in this half a Maimer, and again in the next Maimer we're going to change our mind. Achalei Nivra Ha'olam means before there was the slightest netiyah towards creation. Before everything. I don't want to say before Teda Neshamas Yisrael, because I don't want to, it's not good to start up with Neshamas Yisrael into Teda, but Luyat if you could say, before there was Neshamas Yisrael, before there was Teda, before, when the Eibush does all by himself, there's who was Shmei Bilvad. As they should pick it up. And you can't make a Hagor. Brother Ben Horkins did not leave Reem. So the Rebbe Rashab is eating his heart out. Versteh nicht. It's a good kasha, yeah? How many times did I ask you already? Just 14. I can ask you 14 more times. You're daled. The table, you dialed it off. You got the question. And he answers it. And he answers it in a way that you can understand it in a Goyen. Who means the Eibishter. Shmoi means the Eibishter. Period. So what do you have two stuff? If who means the Eibishter and Shmoi means the Eibishter, what's the two in Yonim? So the Rebbe says Shmoi. So first he says Shmoi means Oyer. And then he says, when I say that Shmoi means Oyer, I don't mean Mamish Oyer, I mean Koyach. And then he says, when I say Koyach, I don't mean Koyach, I mean Yochelis for Koyach. For Yesh Me'ayin. For Yesh Me'ayin. Shame is the Eibishter's Koyach to Me'hav Yesh Me'ayin. It says in Tanya, in the Gezakei, the Simchav, that only the Eibishter create Yesh Me'ayin. Correct? Why could only the Eibishter create Yesh Me'ayin? Because you cannot give somebody else Yeshes unless you have Yeshes yourself. Correct? And the creation is not a Yesh, it's just bottle. So the only place Yeshes could come from is from Atzmos. And when you say Atzmos, you don't mean Atzmos Samadregi, you mean Taka the Eibishter himself. Who? Correct? Then the Alter Rebbe says, weiter, if the koyach for Yesh Me'ayin has to come from Atzmus, how is it delivered to say that Ishtalshalos? If only Atzmus Mamish could make Yesh Me'ayin, how do you have Yesh Me'ayin in the lower worlds? He has to send it into Ishtalshalos. How did he send it into Ishtalshalos? Because of Oid. Oid Me'ayin Amoid. And because the principle of Oid Me'ayin Amoid, Oid is delivering the koyach for Yesh Me'ayin, which comes directly from Atzmus. So in Oid, you have the koyach for Yesh Me'ayin. Yeah? If in Oid, koyach for Yesh Me'ayin, before the Oid became Oid, when the Oid was Moed, they understood himself. But the Oid, the way it was Moed, that has a shaykh as the Yesh Me'ayin, that's Shmoi. That's what the Rebbe is saying. You know what? Who is the Eibishter? And what's Shmoi? The Eibishter. What's the Nafkemina? Who means the Eibishter? The Bar Bechaloi. Shmoi means that mitzad the idea of Eidem Ein Amoy. The Eibishter the Keich Ma B'Yesh Me'ayin. But before there's Oyer, before there's anything, there's simply the Yochailes that if the Eibishter wanted, you could make Yesh Me'ayin. That's Shmoi. That's what he says. What is the Rebbe trying to gain by doing this? The Rebbe is explaining who is Shmoi if there's no connection to Elam is whatsoever. You have two in Yon, the Eibishter, and that the Eibishter could create. And the idea that the Eibishter could create is not a separate thing in the Eibishter. Because what is it that the Eibishter is creating? He's giving out his Yeshus. So Shmoi means the idea that in Atzmos there's a possibility for the Eibishter to give out his Yeshus. That's all.
Explains why. Explains why this shows. No, does it?
We're calling it Shmoi because it's the Yochailes. The Yochailes face out the Shmoi. Why is it important to identify in Atzmos as the Eibishter by himself, the info Shmoi? I really did not account on this. It's because when the Eibishter creates Yeshes, that's how you know the Yeshes of Atzmos. You cannot know the idea that in Atzmos there's Yeshes until the Eibishter creates a world. So the world is Megale, how in Atzmos you have this inyan. So Shmoi means the idea that once the Eibishter creates the world, and he creates it in the way of Yesh Me'ayin. So the Yeshes of the world, the Yeshes of the Eibishter. So now we know that Eibishter has that koyach. That koyach, before he used it, is called Shmoi. you turn off that program? Maybe, yeah.
Lower the volume.
Okay, lower the volume. No. You'll only make trouble. Sit. They'll sing louder. They'll sing Geschmacken. There'll be a kavanah. There'll be a teyalis. It's not oid, it's shefa. Huh? Mamish. Okay, if you say so. You see, he heard that you were thinking to go and tell him. Okay, let's talk about the idea of Edom and Amar. What I just did was, I acted hysterical and I screamed and I said a lot of exciting things, but I really made a simple point. The reason I said it a lot of excitement, because the truth is it's very exciting. In this half of Maimed, the Rebbe is explaining Ad Shaloi Nivra Ha'olam, not as a level. Any concept of relationship with Eilam is Nivra Ha'olam, and Ad Shaloi Nivra Ha'olam is before that. The Eibush, as he is by himself, you have the opinion of who is Shmai. Who means that only he knows, and Shmai means that he could be Mahavi Yeshmayayin. That's it. Why is there this union of Shmai? Because it informs us of Atzmus. We don't know what the Eibishter is until we see Yeshmayayin. So let me see if I can chaparayim before the next ning. Depends on the length of the sichas. If I was at Fabrenga, we wouldn't have any trouble. But not everybody talks so long. I want to share with you two ideas. Okay? I want to share with you two ideas. Number one, I'll first say the one that's less familiar, okay? Everybody knows about the classic Hemsheich from the Rebbe Rashab. There's about the Samach Vov and Ayim Beis, and there's Eter, and of course there's Samach Tes, Shlita, and there's Samach Sech, Samach Ches, and there's two Hemshech, and Samach Hey, and so on and so on. But there are Hemshech which are not so well known. Especially those Maimorim which were said before Achei Temimim. But there are, by the Rebbe Rashab, Hemsheich and Sugyas, they said before Achei Temimim that are flum fire. Unbelievable. And it's a davar yadua that these Hemsheichim were said because a certain special chassid came to Lubavitch. L'moshel Zdoa Hemshech Achrei Meis Reish Mem Tes, Reb Chaim Ber was in Lubavitch. Whoever Reb Chaim Ber was, the Rebbe Rashab said the Maimon for a chassid. The Rebbe Rashab said the Maimon for the world. The Rebbe Rashab wrote it down. So 150 years later, you and I are learning that Maimon. 125 years later. But B'das Tachten, the Rebbe Rashab knew that this particular maskil was coming. And there's another Maimed, and I think it was said for the Geshem Ber, also a very famous chassid, which really predates Achei Temimim. That's mamish, unbelievable hemshech. It doesn't get enough press. And the Rebbe said it twice, word for word, the Rebbe Rashab. The first time was Shvuas Tov Reish Nun Vav, and the second time was Pesach Tov Reish Nun Zayin. In other words, in 1 year, the Rebbe Rashab repeated the same hemshech twice. He wrote it for Reish Nun Vav, Shvuas, and he rewrote it with different paschalos and siyum in Pesach Tov Reish Nun Zayin. And the second version is unfinished. The Tov Reish Zayin is incomplete. The Reish Nun Vav is finished. And when he copied it over, he didn't finish copying it. You understand? The siyum of those Maimorim is missing. What is that hemshech about? It's a short hemshech, but it's very, very deep. It's very, very deep. The hemshech is about Shem Havaya. What is Shem Havaya? And you have other hemshechim from the Rebbe Rashab where he talks about other shemis. This hemshech asks one question: what is Shem Havaya? And he climbs higher and higher and higher and higher and higher till Atzmos. Obviously, the first madrega starts from the bottom. What's the Shem Havaya? Atzilus. Yud Kei Vav Kei. Is Havaya. And then he says, no, there's Havaya higher than Atzilus. And he keeps going higher and higher and higher. There's Havaya in Nirotzen, there's Havaya in Ak, and Azayvite. He goes, a few Shem Havayas after the Tzimtzum, if you're familiar with Kedeshim V'Reish Samach Vov, there's Havaya Deliel, Havaya Latata, Havaya in Ak, and Havaya Atzilus. This is a hemshech. It's a short hemshech, and by the way, if you have a few days, and nothing to do and a good head. It's a good shtickle. In other words, you want to learn something and finish it and say, oh my gosh, this is powerful. It's a nice piece. This Hemshech Shvuas Tov Reish Nun Vov. It's about 30 pages, not that long. The whole Hemshech goes to Shem Havaya. And the end of the day, the Rebbe Rashab comes away with a question. Does the Eibishter himself have a name? Atzmus, does the Eibishter himself have a name? Well, we know the Eibishter has whatever 7 names, according to Halacha. 10 names, according to Kabbalah. But we always say, Kfi Maisi Ani Nikra, the names of the Eibishter are not describing him. They're describing his pu'ulos, what he does. Is there a name which can refer to Atzmus? So, of course, the first answer is no. Why? Because if you have a name, it's a tayar. If you have a name, it's a description. If it has a description, it has a definition. That means you can understand it. If it has a description and it has a definition, you can understand it, that means it has a limit. The Eibush doesn't have a limit. So the Rebbe says, the Eibush doesn't have a name. Finished. But then the Rebbe Rashab changes his mind. He says, yeah, Atzmus has a name. The Eibush himself has a name, and the name of Atzmus, the most mamish, is Havaya. Now, how could the Eibush have a name? Havaya. So first of all, as I mentioned to you earlier this year, there is the idea that Havaya means Faran. That's it. Havaya doesn't mean creator. Havaya doesn't mean ain't safe. Havaya means is. That's it. Havaya means he is. Havaya, Faran. There is that concept. But in this Hemshech, Reish Nun Vov and Reish Nun Zayin, and I haven't seen the Hemshech in 25 years, but that's how I remember it. The Rebbe Rashab says, how could you say that Atzmus Mamish has a name, and the name of Atzmus Mamish of Shem Havaya? So he gives you this idea that we have in our mind. That the truth of Atzmus is Yeshus. The truth of Atzmus is Farad, that he exists. That's it. The greatest thing about the Eibush is not that he's infinite and that he's very smart and that he's very strong. The greatest thing about the Eibush is that he exists. And he asks the question, if that's the greatest thing about the Eibush, that he exists, I also exist. So maybe I'm missing some secondary miles, but the primary mile I have. And for the Gemara, but you exist because there's a him. And he exists because of no one but him. Otherwise, it's exactly the same. You see the point? So, the greatest thing about the Eibishter is that the Eibishter is Farad. That's it. Not that he's smarter, not that he's stronger, not that he's infinite, and not that whatever. Not that there is Malkum, don't matter. The greatest thing about the Eibishter is the Etzem Inyan as the Eibishter is Farad. That's all. The greatest thing about Hashem is that Hashem exists. And that is called Shem Havaya. Why? Because the Eibishter made us. And the Eibishter made us in a way that we're a Yesh. The Eibishter made us in a way that we exist separate from him. The Eibishter made us in a way that we feel. How does the world feel? Like it's, I hate to say these words, it's God. There is no God. I'm my own God. The Eibishter made the physical universe in a kind of way that it says, Yesh me'ayin ve'efes ha'muchlad. There's nothing but the Eibishter made this physical world in a kind of way that the physical world should perceive itself as being a yesh. So the Rebbe says, where does that yeshus come from? That yeshus comes from the Eibishter. So we're calling the Eibishter Havaya because he creates us. But when you say that the Eibishter is called Havaya, he creates us, it reveals that the Eibishter is Havaya, that he exists. That's why, if I'm not mistaken, that's what is at the end of that Hemshech. After he goes through all the different Madregas of Shem Havaya, the last Madrega is the Shem Havaya is the name of Atzmos. The Eibishter himself is called Shem Havaya for a funny reason. He made us, and we're Yesh. And our Yesh is a raya to his Yesh. So because he made us and we're Yesh, we know he's Yesh. And therefore, Havaya, the Eibishter, the Creator, reveals the Eibishter himself, which is that he exists. This is more or less what it says in that hemshech. Here, the Rebbe calls it Shmoi. There's the Eibishter, and there's the Eibishter's name. What is the Eibishter's name? Havaya. What does Havaya mean? Havaya means that the Eibishter could create a yesh. And by the virtue of the fact that the Eibishter could create a yesh, we know that the Eibishter is a yesh. So what's the difference between Hu and Shmoi in our shtickle? What's Hu and Shmoi? Hu means only what the Eibishter knows. And Shmoi means his name is that he exists. But the name that he exists, we know from the fact that he made us to be a yesh. And for the fact that he made us to be a yesh, we know that he's a yesh. And therefore Shmoi is not saying that he's ain't safe or that he's smart or anything else other than the fact that he exists. That's the pshat. That is the pshat. Hashem makes a yesh down here, and that yesh reveals that the Eibishter himself is a yesh. Shmoi is the name of the Eibishter as it exists by himself that reveals that he's a yesh. That's it.
Shmoi is used to create Achei Temimim.
Shmoi is Achei Temimim. And Achei Temimim in this maimer means that there's no ishtalchus at all. There's just atzmas. Eibishter himself. If there's Eibishter himself, how do you have Hu or Shmoi? Hu means that only he knows. Or Shmoi means that his name, which is that he is able to create yeshes, reveals that he is a yesh. And Shmoi doesn't mean he made the yeshes. He could make the yesh. And the fact that he could make the yesh makes him, reveals to us that he's a yesh. That's the taich. That's what the Rebbe Rashab is explaining Hu or Shmoi in this moment. Hu means atzmus. And Shmoi means atzmus. There's nothing besides for atzmus. So why do you have two words? Hu means nobody knows him. And Shmoi means we know him. That's the whole difference. The Eibishter, as he is by himself, there's two in Yanim. Number one, that nobody knows him. And number two, that we do know him. Same Eibishter, same atzmus. Nobody knows him because only he knows him. And we do know him because his creating yeshes reveals that he's a yesh. And Shmoi means the idea in the Eibishter that he could create yeshes, and therefore we can know that he's a yesh. And that's why we're calling him Shmoi.
So we know Shmoi or we know Hu?
Look at the end of the Maimer, page Samach Aleph, please. Look at the end of the Maimer. The last 11 lines of Mizagim. You look inside. Ulefize, guys, if I lost you, don't worry. Tomorrow we're starting a new Maimer. Okay, it's just tonight. There's 45 minutes in your life. Ulefize, inyan hu ishmei. According to this Maimer. And in this Maimer, Achei Nivra Ha'olam is not a level. Achei Nivra Ha'olam has no context. Achei Nivra Ha'olam means before there was anything, before anything, he was by himself. And nevertheless, Rabbi Elazar ben Hurkon says you should know that Eibishter is in ganzen farziach and Hu Shmei. How could you have two things? So he explains. Hu Hainu. What is the meaning of Hu? We're talking about the Eibishter, only Eibishter knows. Nobody knows him. Nobody could know him. Finished. Shmei. Hu HaKoyach VaYacholos. That's the strength and the possibility. Lahaves, to create yeshes sheba atzmus, as it is still in atzmus. Now, I gave you a shir earlier this year about the words koyach and yecholos. I don't know if you remember, but there's a rule in Chassidus, which is a foundational rule. It's based on Kisvei Arizah, but it's brought in Samach Vav, as I'm sure you know, that ein keach as a peil amayim. There's no such thing as the Eibush having a potential which is not actions. If the Eibush has a brain, it's full of knowledge. If the Eibush has a heart, it's full of kindness. If the Eibush has a wallet, it's full of money. The Eibush cannot have a potential. It's not actualized because Hashem has no chesrenis. And not only Hashem has no chesrenis, but Hashem leanness has no chesrenis. So this is brought in the beginning of Samach Vav. It's repeated again by Yechi. Ein koyach chaser pa'elamad. There cannot be with the Eibush a koyach, a tool, a possibility, which is chaser. So then the Rebbe Rashab asks a kasha on this himself. Can there be by the Eibishter Keach which is Chaser Peil? We just said Ein Keach Chaser Peil because Eibishter can't have any Chesrenis. And the minute something exists by Keach, has to exist by Peil, Is there a concept by the Eibishter of koyach b'li poyel? This is what Rebbe Rashab asks. In the first few pages of the Samach of Mamish. And the Rebbe Rashab says, yeah, there can be koyach b'li poyel. You know when there is? When the koyach is not a koyach yet, when it's yechelis. What's a koyach? A tool. What's a koyach? Mitzias bebal koyach. You're a person with a brain. There are two things. Your brain is your koyach. If you have a brain, you don't use it, it's chassid. You're a person, you have a heart. Your heart is a koyach. If you don't use your heart, it's chassid. And by the Eibishter cannot have koyach, which is chassid. Yeah. What happens if the koyach doesn't exist yet? There's only the Eibishter and the possibility for koyach. And that is the meaning of these two words. When you have these two words together, hakoyach, vayachoylas, that means the madreg of koyach, which is like a chasapel by the Eibishter, and it's not a chasadim. How can you have koyach by the Eibishter, it's not a chasadim? And the answer is, when it's not yet madreg, it's a koyach. The Eibishter could do anything he wants. If the Eibishter could do anything he wants, and he doesn't do it, it's not a chasadim. But if the Eibishter has a tool for everything, then he has to do it. In the madrega of koyach, there can't be a chasapel. In the madrega of koyach v'yachoyles, because it's not koyach, it doesn't have to be the poyach. You know what shmai means? The koyach to create yeshus, and the madrega where it's still yachoyles. So the mele doesn't have to do anything. But it's the idea that it could do. That's the tight shmai. Look at the language. Ushmayu, vos meint shmai. HaKoyach v'hayachoyles, the koyach and the madreg of yachoyles. Where you don't have to say that if he has a koyach, he has a poil. It's only a koyach. Because it's only a yachol. Lahav to create yeshus sheba'atzmus, says the Rebbe Shayadei Zeh, that when the Eibishter creates yeshus, who nida v'nigla lakel, we know atzmus. Sha'akel yedim eiseh shuadein elam b'cholo. When the Eibishter makes yeshus in this world, then we know that he's a yesh. V'hayedio sheyedim eiseh k'mei shube'am b'cholo v'haynu sheyedim sheyesh mahava, that we know that there's a creator. And the Eibush is a creator. Shemitziyusei mi'atzmusei, that the Eibush doesn't exist. No, when the Eibush makes yeshus down here, that allows us to know that the Eibush himself is a yesh. Shayedi ezeis hi ade b'chinish ma'yizbarach. Since the Eibush makes yesh mi'ayin through oir, and when the Eibush makes ayin through oir, we know atzmus. So oir informs us of the yeshus of the Eibush. So shmai means the oir of the Eibush, which is not yet oir. It's the koyach v'yachoyles for oir, which is the koyach for the chayles for yeshus, which tells us that the Eibush is a yesh. So shmai means that the Eibush is a yesh before anything exists. That's what's written here. So shmai means havaya. But what havaya? Not that he does create, but that he could create. And that he could create namadrege, which is not even koyach, it's only a chayles. But the when and if he creates, that'll reveal his yeshus. And when he reveals his yeshus, we'll know that he's a yesh. So before he does any of those things, shmoi means the idea that the Eibush is a yesh. Mitzat shmoi. And that's the pshat. Hu u'shmoi. Hu means the Eibush that nobody knows. And shmoi means that same Eibush as we know him. That's all. But there's no difference between Hu and shmoi. Why? Hu, he knows only himself. Shmai also means only knows himself, but the idea that he could be known by another because of what he could do that he hasn't done yet. And that's the pshat of Hu or Shmai Vavad Mamish in Atzmos. That's what this Maimed is doing. That's what this Maimed is doing. Okay, now, let me give you one more thing to think about, right? The first Mara Mokum that I gave you, and if you have time, over Shavuos Taka, take a project, take a this Shavuos Tavresh and Vav. It's 3 Maimorim, or whatever, it's one long Maimor, one short Maimor. If you have time and you have Koyach and Moyach, you'll enjoy it. Finish it. And then worry about understanding it. First, see how many Madregas of Shem. It's very comprehensive. You see, the Rebbe Rashab built a Maimer to explain every Madreg of Shem Havaya and Teshtashalos, and the end is that Atzmus can be called Havaya. How could you give the Eibush to the Toyar? And the answer is Havaya means it creates Yeshus, and the Yesh he creates reveals that he's a Yesh, and that's why we call him Havaya, and that Shem Havaya is a Shem HaEtzem. It's Eibush's own name. That's the first thing, yeah? This is uncommon. It's a special hemshach. Now, let me say something classic. In other words, the second idea that I'm sharing to explain this is from the Samach Vov, from the Kimcham Kircham. It's a famous Maimon. Allah is the Maimon. And the truth of the matter is that Rebbe Rashab talks about this, and it's pshat in the Alter Rebbe. But this is our Rebbe's department. If you understand what our Rebbe, the Rebbe Zol Gesund Sein has added things to Chassidus. Et Fernande genommen. Peter Shabbal Shem to Fernande gespielt. The Rebbe took certain sugyas and he opened them up in a way that's mind-blowing. And this is one of the Rebbe's sugyas. It's really nerve-wracking. It's edel, Rebbe, edel, Rebbe, edel. But it's something that is in the Rebbe's Torah very, very important. Okay? And that is the following. Everybody knows the meaning of Ermei Namor. Everybody knows the meaning of Ermei Namor. Ermei Namor means that whatever the source is, the light reflects. There's a lot of reasons for why we say Ermei Namor. But the simplest reason, the reason Ermei Namor is because Eir comes from Moir Memela. Right? And you probably noticed on these 2 pages that one of the things that's about Shmai is that it's not Memela. It's Beratz. He chooses to do it, right? This is breaking that rule of Ermei Namor, as you'll see in a minute. Okay? So the Eibishter has Oir, right? There's Hashem and Hashemliness. Hashemliness is Me'ein Amor. It's the same. The word Me'ein is the same color. It's exactly the same. Yeah, not gold farb. Hashem farb. Whatever Hashem looks like. Why is Oir Me'ein Amor? Because Oir is B'meila from the Mor. If the light comes down the bottom, if light comes from the source, whatever the source has, the oil has to have, because there's nothing to change it. If the oil is any kind of tzimtzum, it has to be a mitzamtzim. If it has to be a mitzamtzim, it's no longer a mimela, so it's no longer oil. So the simplest concept of oil mein amoyed is whatever the oil has, the moyed has, the oil has, because it comes mimela. Now you must understand that this concept that I just said, Emin Amoyed, has a huge chesed. There's a very, very big chesed. And the chesed is that it's called ha'ara. Emin Amoyed means you come from the source, your perfect reflection of the source. But the only reason you could be a perfect reflection of the source is because the source isn't doing you, you're happening by yourself. It's ha'ara. Which is why Rabbi Yossi, when we speak about Eidin Seif, I mean, we don't talk about this a lot, or we talk about it a lot, but we make believe we didn't see it because we don't understand it, it makes us nervous. One of the downsides of Eidin Seif is a guy whose name is Achei Temimim. You ever heard of Achei Temimim? You ever met him? Achei Temimim. You came across what Achei Temimim mean? Ask philosophers about infinity. What are they going to tell you? Ask Spinoza, who we threw out mid and Apocalypse. He was stuck Apocalypse. What will a philosopher tell you about infinity? If something is truly infinite, it can't have a good and a bad. It can't have a right and a wrong. Because those are limitations. So the Chokrim, the Apokursim, because they understood that God was infinite, they came to the conclusion that he can't possibly have an opinion. He can't say this is a mitzvah, this is an aveda. He's infinite. We have such a concept in Chassidus. We call it Chitzenius Hamakif. And a Pnimius Hamakif, Lahasim Le'el Mota Aksa Di Yisrael. Eat your heart out, but this infinity has a personality. This infinity has awareness. This infinity has will. So the philosophers get all nervous. If he's truly infinite, then truly infinite, truly infinite. And if you're truly an idiot, then truly an idiot. But b'chol, you understand that it's nish pashut. When you have the sugi of Eidin Seif, and you focus on the aspect of memele, memele has a very big chassadah. The memele means happens by itself. The Samach Vav, the Rebbe Rashab eats his heart out. He comes up with this lashon, which he calls it a toyness. He can't be rots, and he makes him very nervous. But the memele means oir is exactly a reflection of the Eibishter. But on the one hand, it's exactly a reflection of the Eibishter. On the other hand, it's not the Eibishter at all. It's only a Oy me'ein amoy is maila is that it's ein save, and me'ein amoy it's chesodin is that it's only a ha'ara. And it's a problem. It's something which you have to be mizbeinin, and you have to understand, and you have to understand how it's fixed. V'chuli. It's an arichis. The truth of the matter is, it doesn't matter that Oid doesn't have its own yeshes, because the yeshes of the Oid is the Eibishter. The eye of Eid Ein Seif is Atzmus. But L'Poyel Oid Ein Seif is only Ha'ara. Okay, now, why do we use this form of Eid Ein Amor? We use the form of Eid Ein Amor just as a lumpdus, which is beyond the scope of tonight's class, because it allows us to understand the Lukus. It helps us understand the Lukus. In other words, it helps us understand the idea that there is something which Hashem did not create, but us. He didn't create it, but us. So if he created Beratzen, then there's a Slapshit, he can put himself into it. If he created Beratzen, it's not godliness, it's a Nivra. But how could godliness be? Godliness is not God, right? But it's not a creation. So if it's not God, not a creation, what is it? It's godliness. How does it exist? Hashem made it, so it's a Nivra. Hashem didn't make it, how does it exist? You see the problem? What's the solution? Mein Amayr. It happened by itself. But that makes you very nervous if you think about it happening by itself. Happening by itself is Hashem has control over it or not? If it doesn't have control over it, you have two gods. If he does have control over it, how did it happen? He made it. It's a Nishta Lakus. He didn't make it. How does it exist? And then my modem struggle with this question. But Oir Me'ein Amoir is big minor is it happens by itself. And it's big chesed and it's only a order. Okay? So now, so this is the concept in Kabbalah. I mean, Oir ain't safe. I mean, I don't know how much Kabbalah uses the atheist of Oir. But when you learn Chassidus, and they want to explain the Lakus, we use the Moshel of Oir. Right? What are the Mukubal? They want to use the Lashon. When they want to talk about godliness, what do they say? They said Havaya. We don't say Havaya, we say Oir ain't safe. Right? The Alter Rebbe has my modem, Lahav and Inyan, Oir ain't safe. The Tzemach Tzedek has my modem, Lahav and Inyan, Oir ain't safe. And in the Memorim later, I don't know why it changed. It changed from being Lahav and Inyan Erin Seif to Lahav and Inyan Erev Shefa. The Memorim became Erev Shefa. But this sugi of Erev Shefa, Zeish Chukas and Samach Vav, is asking this question: explain godliness. He didn't make it, and it's not him, and it's not Hepech HaAchdus. Those are very big statements. Hashem didn't make Hashemliness, but there's no two gods, and it exists. Oir Ein Seif is a very tricky concept. Oir Me'ein Amor. But now, so this is what it says, again, what I just told you, let's blame that on Kabbalah. Okay, Kabbalah teaches us that there's something called a Lukus. It's not the Eibishter, it's not a creation, this is Mein Amor. Good. Fine. So, I left you with a bunch of kashas. You can do them for homework. We don't have time to talk about the kashas, but I want to say something else. When you say Eir Mein Amor, you say that happens memela from oil, right? Light comes to us automatically. And you also say that the light does not have the moed in itself at all. Right? Pravda? Machon? Gerecht? Richtig? True? Because if the oil has the moed, then it's not memela. Right? Here comes the Alter Rebbe. And the Alter Rebbe makes a revolution of what I just said. If we accept, and it's a big if it's true, that the content of Eir Me'ein Amor that I presented so far, we're going to blame on the Mukubalim. Okay? Why? It's fun to blame the Mukubalim. We're not so close to them, we're not so friendly, it's okay for us to be angry at them. Yeah, we're blaming on whichever Mukubalim went on. Yeah. Kommt again the Alter Rebbe with a klotz kash. If you're going to tell me that Oir Me'ein Amor means that on the one hand the Eir is a perfect reflection of the source, which is the Eibishter. On the other hand, there's nothing of the source in the Eir, because it's happening memela. It's only ha'ara, yeah? If Eir Ein Seif comes from the Eibishter and has everything that the Eibishter is, but none of what the Eibishter is because it's only ha'ara, yeah? Not supposed to come a drum roll, then it's not Me'ein Amor. Me'ein Amor means what? Whatever the Eibishter is, the Eid is. He just said none of the Eibishter is in the Eid. This is a question that the Rebbe is in effect asking in Tanya. This is a question which happens in Samachvov, and this is a question which the Rebbe pounds home in his Maimorim. If you remember the Basi Lagani from last year, Chav Gimel, this was the Sugya. Chav Gimel, the Chabez, the Maimir better in Chav, Chabez. It's a very deep Maimir. This is one of the issues that's raised. If Eir Mein HaMoed means that everything the Moed has, the Oid has. And the way the Oid has it is he has it, but Derech Mameli. And it's only a Ha'ara. If Eidin Seif is only a Ha'ara, then it's not Mein HaMoed. They go around in a circle. In Oid, there's nothing of Atzmus. Then how is it Mein HaMoed? If Oid has something from Atzmus, so then you got a Kasha, how did it happen? So this is the Alter Rebbe's revolution. This is Tanya. And Alter Rebbe's Mechadish, a very big Chiddush. And like I said, the later Rebbeim developed this further, and the Rebbe develops more than any other Rebbe, from what I am able to understand, and if my Monday talks about it. You cannot say the Eir Mein HaMoed means there's nothing of Atzmus. Because if you say the Eir Mein HaMoed means there's nothing of Atzmus, then it's not Mein HaMoed. So how do you solve that problem? How could Eir Mein HaMoed be only a Ha'ara? And Eir Mein HaMoed every mile that Atzmus has? And the answer is that it's Behelim. If you meet Oir, it's Me'ein HaMoed and Eifin of Ha'ara. If you met Eidin Seif, tell him, was machste, I told you, he would tell you, go meet my source. He's a very boring guy, Eidin Seif. One thing, meet my source. Don't talk, meet my source. Meet my source. That's a very simple guy. Eidin Seif, that pushed it, meet my source. But, although Begilui, Oir Mein HaMoed is only Ha'ara, you have to say that Behelim Oid is much more than only Ha'ara. It has to have inside of itself Atzmos, because if it doesn't have inside of itself Atzmos, it's not Mein HaMoed. And that's how the Rebbe Mashab, the Alter Rebbe makes the link to Yesh Me'ayin. How did the Alter Rebbe make Eidin Seif the source of Yesh Me'ayin? Because Ein Mein HaMoed. But Ein Mein HaMoed is only Ha'ara. And what's Yesh Me'ayin? Atzmos. So if you meet Oyer, the Metzias of Oyer, the Gili of Oyer is only Ha'ara. And in that aspect you say that Oyer is Chitzonius. It's Me'ein HaMoed. It happens B'meila from the source. On the one hand, it's a perfect reflection of the source. On the other hand, it happens automatically. So none of the source is in it. But on the other hand, if there's none of the source in it, it's not Me'ein HaMoed. So Behelim, in the Oyer, you have even the Inyanim and Moed that Oyer doesn't reveal, including Yeshus. And if you ever learn Samach Vav, the Rebbe Rashab says, and the Frierdiker repeats in his Maimorim, I think in Tafshin Zayin, that Oir Mein HaMoed means whatever the Moed has, the Eid is Magal. Oir Mein HaMoed means that Behelim and Oir, you also have the union of Yeshus. And then he says, and Oir Mein HaMoed has other inyanim which we do not know because they're not revealed in the creation. In other words, we add a new dimension to Oir Mein HaMoed. The simple touch of Oir Mein HaMoed is that whatever the Moed is, the Eid reveals, it's only a Ha'ara. The deeper Tashem and Moed is, whatever Moed is, it carries, not be his galos. You don't see it, but it has to be there. If Eid does not have the Inyanim Ne'lamim, or the Eibush that is, it's not Mein HaMoed. If Eid is Megala, the Inyanim Atma, the Eibush that is, the Eibush has to create it. So Eid Mein HaMoed is two concepts. The Gilu of Eid, which is only Ha'ara. And the fact that because it's Mein HaMoed, they're carrying deeper Inyanim, including Yeshus. This second idea, in our mind, is called Shmai. The first idea is Chutz Li'atzim. The second idea, that Oyer Me'ein HaMoed doesn't only carry what Oyer is Megala, but it carries the Inyanim and more that Oyer is not Megala, is called here Shmai. Because in this Maimer, Achei Temimim is talking about the Eibush did before he even thought about creating anything. As he's all by himself. And the Maimer is bothered, if the Eibush is all by himself, how does he have two Inyan Mu'ishmei and Muvad is one? So who describes that only he knows him? And Shmai describes that not only could there be from him Oyer, which is Megala the Inyan that are Ha'ara, there could be from him Oyer, which is Megala his Etzem, which is not even his Galus in Oyer. But it has to be in Oyer, otherwise that is not Mein HaMoed. So the good news is that it's 9:33. And the bad news is that it's 9:33. And the better news is that tomorrow night I'm signing the next Maimer.
Good news is we're ending.
So you didn't get the share, don't eat your heart out. Neither did I. I made it.